State of Kuwait and the United Kingdom are old friends.
Celebrating the 125th anniversary of the Kuwaiti-British trade relations, two significant events took place: an exhibit at the Kuwait National Library and a lecture by British Kuwaiti researcher Isa Dashti. Both highlighted key milestones in the partnership, spanning areas such as trade, culture, education, investment, and defense. The exhibit, titled From the Kuwaiti-British Trade Archive, which took place earlier today at the Kuwait National Library, marked the 125th anniversary of the Kuwaiti-British trade relations. This event showcased a collection of the historical documents, photographs, and publications that highlighted the long-standing commercial and diplomatic ties between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. The exhibit celebrated by key milestones in the relationship, beginning with the Anglo-Kuwaiti Agreement of 1899, which formally established trade and diplomatic relations.
I've really enjoyed having a look at the different photographs, also letters, news sheets, magazines, all sorts of archive material, which highlights how long-standing the UK commercial relationship is with the state of Kuwait. It was interesting to see the focus on some of the medical and pharmaceutical sectors, as well as transport and also machinery. So it's interesting to look back at the UK's heritage around manufacturing, which we're still strong in now, and then compare it with the sort of collaborations that we have in terms of commercial work with Kuwait, where now we're looking more at cybersecurity, AI and different kinds of technology. But it was a wonderful exhibition here at the National Library. Really enjoyed being here.
This agreement was crucial in shaping Kuwait's development, with British involvement playing a significant role in the nation's infrastructure and economic growth. One of the highlights of the exhibit was the history of the Kuwait Investment Office (KIO) in London, which has grown into one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds. The materials on display provided a comprehensive overview of how this partnership has influenced Kuwait's modern economic landscape and deepened cultural and educational ties between the two nations. As the exhibit concluded, attention shifted to a deeper exploration of Kuwaiti-British relations, with a lecture soon following to commemorate the 125-year milestone. This event, hosted by the NCCAL, provided further insights into the evolving partnership, covering key milestones in trade, defense, culture, and education. NCCAL, in partnership with Kuwait National Library, hosted a lecture commemorating 125 years of partnership by Kuwaiti researcher Isa Dashti that included key milestones and dates in various eras of the Kuwaiti-British partnership. This year marks a milestone in our partnership with Britain, highlighting the enduring relationship we share with the UK in various areas such as trade, investment, defense, education, and culture. Moreover, Kuwait's Cultural Week has kicked off, showcasing Kuwait's heritage with various events at Kuwait's Embassy in London, and in November this year we will witness the British Cultural Week in Kuwait, with musical events and film screenings to take place. The relationship between our two friendly countries and people has its own deep-rooted history that were weaved and shaped by a long history and shared perspectives.
State of Kuwait and the
Good evening and welcome to this special episode as we mark 125 years of Kuwaiti-British relations, a partnership that has not only withstood the test of time, but has also flourished across various domains. Tonight I'll be with you, Yusuf Jamal Ibrahim, joined by my colleague Badriya Saleh.
That's right, Yusuf. Tonight's show, we will go through a journey that is rich of history and its unique alliance, one that began in the late 19th century and has since grown into a deep, multifaceted relationship encompassing political, economic, cultural, and military ties. From the signing of the Anglo-Kuwaiti Agreement in 1899, which laid the foundation for the strategic alliance, to the shared challenges and triumphs that have strengthened this bond over the years, the relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom is a testament to the mutual respect, shared values, and common vision for the future. With that, let's begin.
I would like to introduce our guest for tonight, Dr. Mohammed Khalid Al-Jassar, Secretary General of the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters. Dr. Mohammed, thank you for joining us here today. And we would like to first start, before we delve into more questions about the 125 years relationship, we would like to know more about the National Council, if you could tell us, please.
First of all, thank you for having me here, and this is a great opportunity to talk about the National Council, but also about the relationship with the United Kingdom. The National Council, last year we celebrated 50 years of its establishment. It was established in 1973, and throughout the years the National Council was the main body in the government that took care of any issues that deals with culture, the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters. And of course, when we talk about culture, culture is a large umbrella that governs, or that contains everything that deals with what humans develop over the years that becomes part of their identity. So culture and identity is very important, or there's a strong relationship between the two. Hence, the National Council, the importance of the National Council is that it's also an important agency that protects and promotes the identity of Kuwait and develops the cultural landscape of Kuwait. So this is a very important aspect of it. And of course, the National Council today, as in its structural system, it consists of 5 major divisions. The Antiquities and Museums is one division, which houses, or which takes care of historic buildings, archaeological sites, as well as all the museums, government museums. We have the National Library of Kuwait, which takes care of the National Library as well as all public libraries. We have the Division of Culture, which takes care of all of our publications, including the most famous Al-Arabi publication, which started in 1958. But we also have 5 other publications and journals, and one of them is a peer-reviewed journal that's recognized internationally for its quality of research. We also have the Arts Division, which takes care of all the visual and performing arts, theater, music, and so on. And then we have Dar al-Athar Islamiyya, which is a joint venture with Al-Sabah Collection, and it's one of our most important divisions because it houses the a very unique collection of Islamic arts, almost over 30,000 privately collected Islamic pieces. A very unique collection. It's the most complete collection in terms of the chronological order and the narrative of Islamic arts. So these are more or less our
activities.
The National Council, and it's an important agency. It's an important part of the government that takes care of any aspects of culture and arts.
So, Dr. Mohammed, from my understanding, that the National Council takes care and preserves the arts and art and museum for the next generation.
Absolutely.
Dr. Mohammed, can you please tell us what the National Council was busy with for the past week?
For the past week, in Kuwait or outside of Kuwait, it depends.
We'll start with Kuwait first before we move to the UK.
So for the past week, we are now working on what we have signed recently in the U.S. in New York, which is the we signed an MOU with World Monument Fund to start working on Failaka Island to promote it as a cultural tourism, and also to start registering the island in the World Heritage Sites. It is unfortunate to say that Kuwait is one of 27 countries that doesn't have World Heritage Sites. There are 167 countries have registered World Heritage Sites. All of the Gulf states have registered World Heritage Sites, except Kuwait. Therefore, this file in particular, which is the moving with the World Heritage, is very important for us. And with that one, I'd like to just mention a note that what we have signed recently with the World Monument Fund is a protocol that will prepare the dossier completely to be submitted to the World Heritage to be registered. But they also will provide us with a strategy, a roadmap of how to operate Failaka Island as a cultural tourism hub. And there's a very important difference between classical tourism and cultural tourism. Cultural tourism consists of 40% of international tourism today, and it's on the increase. Therefore, I think this is our biggest chance to promote Kuwait as a tourist through cultural tourism rather than through classical tourism. And that's one part. The other part is we just finished Summer Festival, which lasted for 2 months. Summer Festival this year was unique because instead of making it for 2 weeks, we decided to go for 2 months to engage the youth throughout the summer vacation, those who are still in Kuwait, with various activities that would engage them, occupy their time, but engage them in a very productive programs, whether workshops, theater, music, art, things that would occupy the time but would also enrich their cultural knowledge. Exactly. And of course, we have in the United Kingdom right now, we're celebrating with the...
That's outside of Kuwait.
That's outside of Kuwait, yes, with outside of Kuwait. We have several programs outside of Kuwait, but this week, especially last week, we have a wonderful week of cultural events in the United Kingdom with the Embassy of the State of Kuwait and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in collaboration with Kuwait Heritage Society, as well as various people who are interested or who have collection of documents and artifacts about the relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. So I think yesterday or the day before they concluded this 1 week event. It was an exhibit of the various artifacts and documents and that exist between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. There was a music band that went there from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There were some cultural as well as entertainment events that shows the relationship, the strength of relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom when it comes to not just the diplomatic side, which of course the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is excellent at it, but also from the cultural side. The cultural is very important, what we call soft diplomacy. So that was what was going on, and we look forward for further collaboration in the few months coming.
Dr. Mohammed, we're going to dig deeper into those collaborations and into the artifacts and things that we already have here in Kuwait and that have strengthened our relationship with the UK in the previous times.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a quick break and move to my colleague Badriya. Stay tuned.
And the United Kingdom are old friends.
Welcome back, dear viewers, to the special program celebrating 125 years partnership between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. It's a pleasure to say that joining us now on the line is Dr. Saeed Shehaitat, the lecturer in Middle East politics and international relations in the UK, to give us his insights on Kuwaiti-UK relations. Doctor, thank you for joining us. Let's kick right off with our interview. Can you give us a general explanation of how the partnership between the two nations has evolved since the 1899 Kuwaiti-Anglo Agreement, a friendship that's 125 years in the making?
I think there's many milestones of the relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. And the backbone of this relationship is based on friendship, respect, mutual benefit, and partnership. So the partnership is the word which summarizes the relationship between the two countries. It started officially in 1899 with the Anglo-Kuwait Agreement. And the agreement is not only on security level, but on trade and other components. And it's not one-sided relationship, but like two-sided, like where each side benefits from the other. Then it evolved in different shapes, and in 1961, when there was a threat of Iraq to Kuwait, the United Kingdom was announcing support for Kuwait, and was this put off Iraq from doing any invasion for Kuwait. Then the peak of the relationship came after the Iraqi invasion in 1990 and the liberation of Kuwait, and United Kingdom played a big role with the United States and other Arab countries and coalition to liberate Kuwait from the Iraqi invasion. The main component elements of the relationship is based on security and military cooperation. There is training exercises to strengthen the ability of Kuwait. Also, there is cooperation on the cyber security with the threats of the cyber attacks on different levels. So, and United Kingdom helped Kuwait to establish the National Center for Cyber Security, which help a lot in cooperation regarding these issues. In addition to that, there is a common interest between them on trade levels, where the trade volume reached about $5 billion in 2024. There is the Kuwaiti Investment Office, which was established in 1953, and it invested, or it's responsible for $250 billion, and there's a lot of investment there. And it came in last year when His Highness Amir of Kuwait, Sheikh Nishal, visited Britain and signed a partnership agreement with Rishi Sunak, the then Prime Minister, which drives the way for a new investment, Kuwaiti investments in the UK industries. At the same time, support Kuwait changing its economy according to the Kuwait 2030 35 vision, which makes Kuwait or aims at for Kuwait to be a regional hub financially and on trade level. So on different levels, militarily, politically, economically, there's cooperation between them. And recently, a few days ago, when there's the 21st session of the joint steering group between UK and Kuwait, they agreed on humanitarian support in Palestine and in Yemen and other projects. So, and this steering committee or steering group meet like twice a year, once in Kuwait, once in Britain, and it shows how the strength of the relationship between them. And in each session, they agree on different levels of cooperation, and this seen, and as I told you, on trade, politically, and economically, on all levels. So there is a strong relationship based on partnership between the two sides.
Dr. Saeed Shaid, lecturer in Middle East politics and international relations in the UK, giving us his insights on Kuwaiti-UK relations. Thank you, Doctor, for your time. Now we'll head back to Yusuf to hear more from our special guests in the studio. Please stay with us.
Thank you, Badria, and we're back with Dr. Mohammed Al-Jassar with a few questions before we get back to Badria, but we're going to start with the first question. Dr. Mohammed,
yes.
Let's talk about Beit Dixon House.
Dixon House. So Dixon House is almost an icon in Kuwait, especially for our parents, grandparents. They all kind of relate to Dixon House and its position in both its position in the Kuwaiti society, its position in the context of Kuwait City as well.
Correct.
And it's on the seafront. Dixon House was the house for the British representative in Kuwait, which started in the early 20th century. I cannot really recall the exact date for the first occupant, but the Dixon family moved in there in 1929, if I recall correctly, and they lived there until Harold Dixon passed away. His wife, Violet Dixon, continued to live there. She refused to go back to England, and that shows the depth of relationship, but also the intimate relationship between this family and the Kuwaiti society. And she lived in Kuwait until 1990, until the Iraqi invasion. And of course, unfortunately, she passed away outside of Kuwait during the invasion. So Dixon House, as a house, it's an architecturally, it shows a transition between older architectural typology of Kuwaiti houses and the future of Kuwaiti houses. It's kind of one of these transitional houses. We have several of these, of course. Bahbahani Complex is one of them.
Correct.
But when we're talking about Dixon House, because it does have a unique features, architectural unique features. But also, when we're talking about it socially, it became the center of the social relationship between Kuwaiti society and the British society. If we look at the writings of Violet Dixon and her relationship with local Kuwaiti women, both nomadic as well as Hadar, and she talks in depth about her relationship with these families, and she learned a lot, but she also gave us a lot. Violet Dixon is the one who wrote a very important book about the flowers of Kuwait deserts, the flora of Kuwait, and she's the most expert. She was the most expert on this topic.
Within that field.
In that field, of course, it was a hobby for her. It wasn't her profession, but she was so much into it that she documented all of the plants and flowers of the Kuwaiti desert, including the plants on Failaka Island. So, in the collective memory of the Kuwaiti individual, when we're talking about Dixon House, it's the iconic symbol of that strong relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom through a very intimate family social ties between this British family, who were first coming in an official duty to represent the British government, but then, or the United Kingdom government, but then it ended up being a family that stayed in Kuwait, and they became part of the Kuwaiti society. And there are a lot of documentaries about Violet Dixon and her role in the Kuwaiti society. We will have the grandchildren of the Dixon family, hopefully in November, if I recall correctly. We're going to invite them to Kuwait to participate in this type of 125 years relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom.
And you're talking about future exhibitions.
Yes.
Dr. Mohammed, before we talk about future exhibitions, can you tell us about the exhibitions that were held here inside of Kuwait?
Sure.
That are related to the UK?
Sure.
In the past?
I'm gonna take some of the help from my notes. Correct. Because we've had over 10 exhibits so far. And most of them took place at the Kuwait National Library. With that, I'd like to also thank Siham Dawas, the Undersecretary for the National Library of Kuwait. She did a marvelous job in coordinating with the British Embassy all of these events. So we've had so many lectures. We've had lectures about the Kuwait-British relationship when it comes to the protection of Kuwait, especially in 1990, and the important role of the United Kingdom in the liberation of Kuwait. We've had also as you mentioned earlier, Isa Dashti did an amazing job in terms of many events and lectures, including he donated or he gave over 250 images to the National Library. That images mainly relates to the relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. There was also an event celebrating King Charles when he visited Kuwait as a crown prince in 1993. If we look at King Charles' visits to Kuwait, I think he visited Kuwait over 6 times when he was crown prince and prior to that. So that shows the depth of the relationship between the two states. There was also a workshop for, I believe, children to start painting images of this relationship. So we've had several events throughout the past 6 months, 7 months, celebrating this relationship. And we will have also 2 or 3 events coming up with the Kuwait National Library that mainly focuses on this British-Kuwait relationship.
I mean, those exhibitions that were held here in Kuwait in the past couple of months were marvelous, and we're excited to hear about the future exhibitions. If you can tell us quickly, briefly about the future exhibitions.
So we will have one exhibit specifically that deals with the Dixon family as we invite them to Kuwait. So there will be an exhibit about that type of relationship with this particular family. We will also have an exhibit that would summarize this relationship, and that will be the last of the events. So that would be toward the end of this year. We will have also an art exhibit to show the relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom through watercoloring. So these are some of the events that are coming in the next few months.
Before the end of this year?
Before the end of this year, of course.
Dr. Mohammed, let's talk about the historic building preservation.
Yeah.
I know that the National Council is very keen on preserving the historical building. And we mentioned Beit Dixon, the House of Dixon. Are there any other houses?
Sure. We have a lot of buildings that we need to take care of and preserve. Of course, if we're looking at historic buildings in Kuwait, we went through so many phases. We went through the phase of the modernization in the 1950s, where we demolished major part of Kuwait City. And of course, at that time, if we were living at that time, the perception was that this is the only way to progress. But unfortunately, through that process, we also lost a major part of our identity, the Kuwaiti neighborhood. And the only neighborhood that exists until today that represent a Kuwaiti neighborhood is one neighborhood in Failaka Island, and we're working right now to make sure that we save this neighborhood for future generations, so that it becomes a memory of where Kuwaitis lived, and also an identity. It's an important part of the identity. We are working on the Red Fort in Jahra, Al-Qasr Al-Ahmar. Hopefully it will be reopened to the public in November, sometime in November. We have prepared a new museum there that shows the various weapons that were used throughout the battles of Kuwait, specifically also Al-Jahra battle, one of the most famous battles in the history of Kuwait. Al-Mubarakiya School is a very important school. It's the first formal education in Kuwait. Of course, the original Mubarakiya school was later demolished and rebuilt in the 1940s and 50s, but the one that was built in the 1950s is extremely significant because it also was the National Library of Kuwait. So we have a plan of redeveloping it and reopening it sometime next year. Of course, next year is the Kuwait capital of the Arab world culture, as well as Kuwait the capital of the Arab world media. So we are preparing a lot of these buildings for these events next year. Thinking about Dixon House, maybe I'd like to go back to a point before we venture into other topics. The relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom, we're talking about 125 years.
Correct.
But in reality, the relationship existed much deeper than that.
All the way back to 225 years ago.
Exactly. The first official relationship between the state of Kuwait at that time and the United Kingdom was through the Postal Service in 1775, when the United Kingdom moved its station from other ports in the Gulf to Kuwait due to the safety, due to conflicts and other reasons, but also to the safety of Kuwaiti ports, and Kuwait was always neutral, which is a very important strategy that Kuwait carried throughout its history. So in 1775 was the relationship with the United Kingdom when it comes to the Postal Service. Also in 1793, the East Indian Company opened its a station or a branch in Kuwait, and that was also kind of a starting of a relationship. So I just wanted to mention these two before we venture into
which is very important, that our relationship isn't just 125 years. It goes all the way back to 1775, which adds up to 225 years of a relationship. Dr. Mohammed, we asked you about the National Council and its role in preserving historical building, because our next question is going to be about the future of the National Council. But before that, we're going to move to my colleague Badriya for the future of National Council.
Thanks for that, Yusuf, and I appreciate what you two have already discussed, because it leads us perfectly into our next report, which will take us to Beit Dixon, or Dixon House as it's also known, which is also locally known as a testament to the historical timeline of the relationship between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. In this report, we'll highlight how Beit Dixon reflects the enduring ties and significant milestones in the partnership between these two nations. Let's take a closer look.
والله كل الناس يمدحون الكويت وايد يمدح.
يعني ما تتذكرين؟
المرحوم شاف الكويت، هو شاف الكويت من أول، أنا ما شفته، لكن جينا من المركب والمنظر من المركب أحلى شيء. كل البيوت أبيض، كل الصيهد مال قصور الشيوخ يبين من البحر، كل نظيف وكل بلاد طيب. ومن أول التوفة دار مدار الكويت. السور ايه، والبيبان البرياسي، دروازة البرياسي ودروازة الهشامية ودروازة الجحرة.
Dixon House, a notable landmark in the heart of Kuwait, has a rich history rooted in the early 20th century. Originally serving as the residence and office of the British Commissioner, it witnessed a series of distinguished British delegates fulfilling this role. Today, Dixon House stands not only as a symbol of this historical relationship, but also as a vibrant culture center and museum celebrating its role in the ongoing narrative of Kuwait's heritage. Following Captain Shakespeare, several British delegates held the position of British Commissioner for varying periods. Colonel Grey served from 1915 to 1916, succeeded by Colonel Hamilton from 1916 to 1918, and then Captain Locke from 1918 to 1919. Captain McCollum followed, holding the position from 1919 to 1920. Colonel Moore then took over in 1920 and served until 1929, after which Colonel Harold Dixon assumed the role and continued until 1936. A significant event occurred in 1959 when the western wing of Dixon House collapsed due to structural damage. This incident necessitated the rebuilding of its walls and roof with reinforced concrete, replacing the traditional clay and wood materials. Today, Dixon House functions as a cultural center and museum dedicated to the history of Kuwaiti-British relations, managed by the National Council for Culture, Arts and Music. It remains under construction and re-innovation, reflecting its importance as a historical landmark in the state of Kuwait.
Welcome back, dear viewers. This is a special live program. Joining us now on the line is Jamal Shaheen, our correspondent based in the UK. Jamal has been closely covering the latest events, and tonight he's joining us to shed light on Kuwaiti-UK Culture Week, a vibrant and meaningful celebration bridging the cultures between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. Jamal, it's good to have you with us tonight. Let's kick right off into the interview. What highlights can you share about Kuwaiti-UK Cultural Week from London, and give us the latest updates?
Good evening for everybody. It was amazing to cover this amazing event. It was very important to show for all of us what this is meaning for Kuwaiti relationship. If we start from His Highness the Amir Sheikh Mash'al al-Ahmed al-Jabr al-Sabah last year, we can understand now the trade balance between Kuwait and United Kingdom is increased by 1.7 billion sterling pound, which is a huge amount. We need to build on in this. I have an interview with Hamish Falconer, the Minister for Middle East. He said this was amazing. We never see this. We need to build on in this. As all your guests said, I follow what they said. Yes, there is amazing things that was happening, but I need to speak about something like very important. The relationship between the two nations, the relationship between the people itself, because we know the level of the relationship between the two royal families is very strong. Even all ministers confirm this. The relationship is very strong. This is what reflects to the relationship between the two nations and people. We can see this. But we have something called interference with our history. For example, we have General Peter de la Bella, the man who liberated Kuwait as a commander of the British Army. He was the same man who fought for Falkland Islands. So there is something common between our history. For example, as well, I was very admired about what's happened in the concert when I saw Maestro Khalid Nouri have a music called Tashabuk, interference. When I listened to this, he mixed the Irish music, the Scottish music, the Kuwaiti music in a harmony. Everybody was amazing. This is confirms that how much the relationship between both countries is very deep and rooted, even for people itself. So this week was very amazing to show for all of us the relationship between both of countries is maybe 100 years before the treaty. And also people know that the Kuwaiti like football, they like music, how the music from all generation, from long time, is in the people in Kuwait like it. When people listen to some music from Kuwait and it's going in harmony with Western music, that means different. That means more connected to people. So I think even me, when I came from Middle East and I know some about the Kuwaiti music, I wasn't expecting Maestro Khalid Nouri will make this harmony music. I did some interviews with some musician and others said, we never know how it will go. So I like the word, it's called tashabuk or intertones. We have intertones in our history, with the Kuwaiti history, in culture, in economy, even in politics. And now we have nearly 10,000 students from Kuwait study in UK. This means we have more connection between people to people, which is reflected to our relationship. This week was amazing. We need more activity to be like this. When you met with some of the British officials, senior officials, and they like what we have, and they think we need more connected. That means Kuwait have a history, a very rich history, not only in economy, no, only the power of the Kuwaiti and the soft power of the Kuwaiti was amazing. Everybody was here, was like what we see and what we saw.
Absolutely, Jamal, and you are a wealth of knowledge as you've been there covering all the events this week, and look forward to getting back to you later for more updates. That was Jamal Shaheen, our KTV correspondent in London. Many local and British organizations are joining in these celebrations, as you may have gathered, of the 125 years of Kuwaiti-British relations, and Al Sadu House is no exception, holding a London exhibition showcasing Kuwaiti weaving. Originally built in 1936, the house now serves as a cultural hub under the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters. And this event featured Bedouin tent traditions and a documentary on the historic Kuwaiti-British Treaty, and was also attended by British officials and Kuwaiti envoys. Let's take a look at the special report.
Holding the shape of a traditional Kuwaiti house, Al Sadu House was built in 1963 overlooking the seafront. It was built with stone using concrete to reinforce a structure, the first such house in Kuwait, and at the time it sparked much interest among Kuwaitis. In the 1970s, the house was acquired by the state under the Ministry of Information and later by the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, as it embraced one of our beautiful traditions, becoming the home of weavings and textiles named Al Sadu House. By 1984, Al Sadu House had registered 300 Bedouin women, producing about 70 items every week, becoming a major tourist attraction in Kuwait City. In 2006, the building was restored to continue its cultural role of introducing and preserving the weaving heritage from the vast spots of the desert to the urbanized city. The house, under the umbrella of the NCAAL, remains dedicated to preserving and protecting the key elements of Kuwaiti heritage and social history, while also actively working to uphold cultural identity and foster modern artistic creativity. As part of the Kuwait Culture Week in the UK and under the umbrella of the celebrations marking the 125th years of Kuwaiti-British partnership, Al Sadu Society proudly launched an exhibition in London embracing this lifelong tradition. Beit al-Sha'ar embodied a mobile cultural space showcasing the cultural role of the tent in the sustenance and hospice of the nomadic Bedouin of the past, along with the rich traditions of nomadic culture. The event had witnessed an influx of British officials joined by senior envoys from the state of Kuwait to mark the 125th anniversary of the signing of a friendship treaty between the two nations. The mobile cultural space had displayed a documentary about the historic relationship that began with the signing of the treaty and is organized by the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, Kuwaiti Heritage Society, and Beit Al Sadu.
To our viewers who can't make it to the exhibition in London, you can always check out Beit Sadu's beautiful exhibitions that they keep on display locally. Now we'll go back to my colleague Yusuf in the studio for more amazing conversation with our special guest.
Thank you, Bedri. As promised, we stopped at the historic building preservation, and as we promised, we're going to continue talking about the National Council's future. Dr. Mohammed.
Yes.
Earlier, we stopped about the National Council's role in preserving historic buildings. We want to delve deeper into the National Council, its role, and its future as well. If you can tell us more, please.
Okay, so if we start with the historic buildings and the preservation of historic buildings, this is a very important task that we really need to focus on it and create a proper strategy of how to maintain, operate, and save these buildings. It is not easy to maintain a historic building. It's not as easy as regular buildings because of the material, especially if the material was made of earthen architecture, mud and coral rocks and so on. And when you when you maintain a building or when you redevelop it, it's very important that you take care of the materiality, the materials, the way it was constructed and so on. And this needs a proper strategy, and we're working on putting a proper strategy that we can maintain the buildings that we have today. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of the historic buildings in Kuwait through the process of renovation. When the renovation is not done properly, we lose the historic integrity of that building. Doesn't mean that the building doesn't become historic, but the historic integrity takes away part of its identity.
Materials-wise, are we
materials-wise, shape-wise, I mean, there are different categories. When we're talking about the, if we look at the World Heritage Charter and their requirements, to register a building in the World Heritage, it needs to meet several requirements. And unfortunately, when you alter the materials or when you alter the building, it loses that opportunity. And this is where we need to take care of it. Now, it's not because we want to register in the World Heritage. That's not the objective. The objective is to save these buildings for future generations so that our children and grandchildren can have a proper physical identity to relate to. Buildings are memory captures. So what does that mean? It captures the memory of the events that happened around it. So, for example, when we were looking at the Qasr al-Ahmar, the Red Fort in Al-Jahra, the Red Fort in Al-Jahra captures the memory of what happened during 1920, a very important event. It's an event that not just saved the Kuwait, but also properly shaped the future of Kuwait.
Correct.
If we maintain such buildings, we're maintaining also the memory of these buildings. If you look at, for example, even when we're looking at modern heritage, now cultural buildings or historic buildings are not necessarily the ones that are made out of mud and coral rocks, but they are also probably the ones that are made in the 1950s and 60s that have significant role in the development of modern Kuwait. For example, Kuwait Towers. Kuwait Towers was a unique architectural features that was developed in the early 1970s, and it became the icon of Kuwait. Of course, it was opened in the late 1970s, but it eventually became the iconic image of Kuwait. And it's an important part to save such building for future generation. If we look at Kuwait airports, the current one, which was designed by Kenzo Tange, a very famous architect in the mid 20th century. Of course, there was some alteration that happened to that building and to the airport, and we hope in the future that it would be properly rehabilitated to bring its original texture and material back into the viewer's eye. Why is it important to save mid-century or modern heritage architecture? It shows that the state of Kuwait in the 1950s, 60s and 70s was strongly invested in promoting a new Kuwait that's looking to the future, that's promoting a proper education, promoting proper cultural development for its citizens. And this was done through major projects, and these mega projects, we need to save them for future generations. I also say that architecture, saving architectural layers, palimpsests of the history of architecture, is very important. It's like if you have a history book And I always bring this example. You cannot just take 50-year chapter and take it out and say, well, this is the history book of Kuwait. You have to have the layers of the history narrated chronologically. Therefore, saving different layers of architectural history from pre-oil until today is very important for the future generation, for our identity, and for the Kuwaiti society.
Dr. Mohammed, just want to clarify something. You mentioned a few historical buildings were not registered, but they were not destroyed. They are still preserved, but they are not registered because they did not meet the criteria because of whether renovation, we changed the materials, but they are still preserved there for future generations, and they are in our hearts, and that's very important. And as you mentioned, architecture has always been the case. It's very important. We've had many famous architects come to Kuwait. We have already famous architects here in Kuwait. And Kuwait, as we say, the atmosphere is very encouraging, and it attracts a lot of architects from worldwide. And we do actually have buildings that have won awards here in Kuwait, current, especially in the modern era, that they have beaten, let's say, the atmosphere, and they are ventilated very well in a certain way. Is that correct?
Correct. I just want to clarify something for the viewers. All historic buildings that have been studied in Kuwait were registered with us at the National Council as a local registry. I'm talking about losing the opportunity to enlist it in the World Heritage list, and that's a different. Just to clarify that for the viewers. But for us at the National Council, we do have a historic registry for these buildings, and all of the buildings that meets the or qualifies to be historically significant, we do register it and we do protect it, and we have 4 categories of the protection. So domestically, we're doing our job perfect.
Correct.
It's bringing the level of this historic preservation to an international level. That's what we are seeking to develop in the future for the National Council. We want to go from just a local level of protection into an international level of protection.
And we are currently competing with those levels.
We are, and we look forward for Faylak Island to be one of these first to be registered in the World Heritage Sites. And of course, just an important note also, registering in the World Heritage Sites does not mean freezing the site. It actually requires you to develop it. It requires you to further promote it as a touristic place, as a place for cultural tourism, because there's a misconception in so many people that once you register something with the World Heritage, you mean freeze it. That's completely not the case. And actually, the World Heritage does withdraw its recognition if you didn't develop the site. So it's an incentive for us to develop this site, but to develop it properly, under proper guidelines that protects us. And this is what we're looking for. This is as a Kuwaiti society, as Kuwait government, we want to protect and promote at the same time all of these historic sites. Now, coming back to what we have in terms of historic buildings, if we properly develop these historic buildings, if we come back to mainland Kuwait, and with the private sector or with government institutions, just like what we have, and you just mentioned it earlier, Beit al-Sadu. Beit al-Sadu is one of the most important historic buildings, but it's a collaboration with a Sadu Society, and they've been doing a marvelous job at the Sadu Society in terms of promoting this house as a cultural hub for textiles and for the Bedouin textiles of Sadu. So we look forward to these types of collaborations, and that type of collaboration protects these buildings for future generation. We do have many buildings that we still need to do our job to preserve them properly and promote them as cultural hubs for the future.
Dr. Mohammed, so the importance of the National Council is very, very important. It's not just registering a building, it's historic. We are talking about the longevity of that building for future generations. So it's a long-going process.
It is.
So you keep registering year after year or within few years, and you have to maintain specific standards
Yes.
To keep it for future generations, which is very important for us here in Kuwait.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for this particular purpose or the reason, we have established the Earthen Architecture Lab. It's a newly established lab. And we're working on training local Kuwaitis to bring back this profession. We lost the craftsmanship of how to deal with mud, how to deal with earthen architecture.
Interesting.
And we need to bring back that into the Kuwaiti society. And so we're working on training local Kuwaitis. We have collaboration with international experts on this part or on this topic to develop this lab. So we're looking forward, once this lab is properly established, then we will be able to properly rehabilitate and maintain these historic buildings. One of these historic buildings that we are planning to work on very soon, inshallah, is Sheikh Abdullah Jabir Palace, which was also the first national museum in the Arabian Gulf. Of course, historically, it was Diwan Khazal, and Sheikh Abdullah Jabir bought it, and it became his residence, and then he donated this building to the state of Kuwait to become the first national museum. It's in the Dasman area, and unfortunately, because of because of rain year after year, it's demolished. Of course, it was also bombed during the Iraqi invasion. So now we have a program, and we're starting this year to do the proper research of how to rebuild this palace. It's not a palace, the Diwan, rebuild this Diwan to its original shape using exactly the same materials. It's a long process, but it's a very important process, because if we are able to do this particular project in the proper way, then we can do any other project in Kuwait that deals with earthen architecture, with mud and coral rocks. So we're looking forward for this project. It's going to start this year. It will take several years. So we want people to be patient with us, because you know to do something properly. It's not an easy job. No, it's and to do something properly, it takes time.
Correct.
If you do it quickly, it disappears quickly. If you do it quickly, then it becomes what we call pastiche. It looks old, but it's not really old. This is what we're targeting, to preserve the integrity of these buildings.
Dr. Mohammed, that's a very interesting fact. The importance of the National Council is very important for us as Kuwaiti. It has preserved our past, and it will preserve our future. Inshallah. So the National Council is our past and our future as well. Inshallah. And there is a lot of hard work and effort going within that field. Inshallah. We're going to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to move to my colleague Badriya, and we'll get back with more questions.
Thank you, Yusuf. We're privileged to have on the line with us the Charge d'Affaires of the British Embassy, Stuart Summers, who's here to share with us his expertise in fostering diplomatic ties and providing insight into the latest developments between our two nations. Mr. Stuart is going to tell us a bit about the recent Memorandum of Understanding signed between Kuwait and the UK and explain its significance. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Stewart. Can you tell us a bit about the MOI signed between Kuwait and the UK and what areas to focus on?
3 MOUs, Memorandums of Understanding, were signed during the 21st UK-Kuwait Joint Steering Group, co-chaired by the UK's Minister for the Middle East, Hamish Falconer MP, and Kuwait's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Sheikh Jabbar Al Ahmed Al Sabah, in London earlier this week. 2 of these MOUs set out plans for the UK and Kuwait to provide 6 million of joint funding, 3 million each, towards UNICEF's life-saving work restoring water supply and sanitation systems in Gaza and sustaining primary healthcare services in Yemen. The work the UK and Kuwait are funding is expected to benefit almost 2.5 million people in total. We also signed a further MOU outlining planned UK support to Kuwait's Civil Service Commission on the delivery of training programmes to Kuwaiti government employees, equipping them with a range of skills as well as an action plan detailing how our respective governments will drive forward cooperation on a range of key issues, including defence and security and our fledgling international humanitarian development partnership over the coming months.
And any further remarks you would like our viewers to know about these topics in this particular week?
We have made really positive strides in strengthening our relations this year, including on the cultural and people-to-people side, as we continue to celebrate the 125 years of official diplomatic relations. On the theme of cultural links, I would like to congratulate Kuwait on the success of its brilliant Cultural Week in the UK, which both our ambassador here and our Minister for the Middle East have been delighted to partake in. As for our own British Culture Week coming up here in November, we already have some really exciting events lined up that we will be sharing with you via our British Embassy social media pages, UK in Kuwait, on Instagram and X.
Chargé d'Affaires for the British Embassy in Kuwait. We're happy to have you back, and joining us now live on the line is Dr. Salah Al-Hamadi to give us more information on this topic. Dr. Al-Hamadi is an economics professor and strategic consultant, and his insights will offer a valuable perspective on the evolving economic ties between Kuwait and the UK, as well as broader economic outlook for the region. Good evening, Doctor. Thanks for joining us. Tell us a bit about the importance of economic cooperation during the span of the 125-year partnership between Kuwait and the UK.
Well, good evening to you, and thank you for having me here in the program. In terms of the economic cooperation between Kuwait and the UK, it goes back to the signing, of the Anglo-Kuwaiti Agreement, which happened in 1899. And these often, we refer it or as a friendship agreement, as was stated by the UK ambassador UK ambassador to the Kuwait, which remarked the beginning of the formal relationship between Kuwait and UK. And this agreement laid the groundwork for diplomacy and economic ties, and agreement which, secure British protection for Kuwait, helping safeguard its independence and enable Kuwait to flourish its trade hub. However, looking also at the economic side, British merchants established offices in Kuwait as early as the 1793, and also where East India Company moved its headquarters from Basra to Kuwait. That was even before that in 1821. So the relationship, of course, grew stronger, I would say, with the discovery of oil in the 1930s, which laid a significant British involvement in the development of the Kuwaiti oil industry. Later as well, in the economic cooperation in 1950s, British architects designed the modern Kuwait city, contributing to the urban development and helping laying out the modern Kuwait city by moving the building and the people beyond the city wall. Also, the economic cooperation between Kuwait and the UK should be shown in the establishment of the Kuwait Investment Office in London, which is in 1953. That is the first sovereign, wealth office worldwide, enhancing the economic ties, marking Kuwait's commitment to diversify its investment and buildings and financial partnership with the UK. So over the decade, this collaboration has evolved into a broader economic relationship, including trade, in defense, and education, and healthcare, making its partnership beneficial for both nations.
Dr. Salah Al-Hamadi, economics professor and strategic consultant. Thank you for your time and your insight. Now, Yusuf, back to you.
Thank you, Badri, and thank you for the excellent phone calls we heard. And back to Dr. Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed, we're going to move away from architecture. We're going to move all the way to economy.
Sure.
If that's okay with you.
Sure.
Can you talk about the Creative Economy Program with the UK?
So actually, Creative Economy Program started in the UK, and at the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, we do have a program right now that we're working on to develop it into a full-fledged program that deals with creative economy. Creative economy is a process where we look at how we can support local creative minds to develop their talents into a product that can bring economic revenue to them. And this is part of cultural importance to Kuwait, because in terms of diversifying the income, we're talking about to diversify the income from just depending on one source of income. So what do we have that we can capitalize on? We have the human resource to capitalize on, and we do have brilliant young people in Kuwait that they just need the opportunity to develop their own talents and have the window where they can not just develop it, but then start and move forward with it, so that it becomes their source of income, and hopefully that would take them to the international level. So in the past, with the National Council and British firm, right now I'm trying to remember the name, but we collaborated, we brought them to Kuwait in 2018, and there was a major workshop that was done in Kuwait, a panel where they participated in this panel to develop the creative economy sector in Kuwait. So this is a very important sector that we're working on right now. Tom Fleming, right now, I remember the name, and we're looking forward to collaborate. Talking about the economy and the development of economy between Kuwait and the UK. United Kingdom, maybe because Dr. Saleh Al-Hamadi mentioned something that's very important, which is the master plan of Kuwait.
Correct.
That was done in 1951, and it was...
was that the first master plan of Kuwait?
That was the first master plan of Kuwait. It was designed by Minoprius, Spenceley and McFarlane, and the significance of this master plan, it takes its roots from Ebenezer Howard's vision of the future city, where there's a self-sufficient towns, where each town would have its own co-op system, which we still do, and it's a major part of Kuwait's cultural landscape, which is the co-op, the Jam'iyat. And this started from that master plan, where you would have self-sufficient towns, and then separation of functions, and we kind of took that plan to the heart in the early 50s and developed it. And of course, since then, we've had several master plans to enhance on it, and now we're on the 4th master plan. But this is a very important, I'm glad Dr. Al-Hamadi mentioned that in his talk right now. So that's, this shows the strength of relationship with England,
with the UK,
in terms of the economic, in terms of master plan, in terms of the urban fabric, in terms of architecture, and so on.
So to conclude in our show, the importance and the strength of our relationship with the UK, we have the urban planning, we have so many other things, especially investing in people's mind, and we have excellent people here in Kuwait. Thank you so much for joining us here, Dr. Mohammed. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have you on Kuwait Television, and thank you for your experience, and we wish you best of luck.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, folks, that concludes our special episode. A heartfelt goes to Dr. Mohammed Khalid Al-Jassar, Secretary General of the National Council for Culture, and our other guests via phone calls for sharing their valuable insights and perspectives on this enduring partnership. Your contributions have enriched our understanding of the deep ties that bind our two nations. We also like to extend our gratitude to our viewers for joining us today. We hope this discussion has provided you with a deeper appreciation of the rich history, mutual respect, and shared values that have shaped this long-standing and dynamic relationship. Thank you for being here with us tonight, and we hope that you have enjoyed the special exploration of the bonds between Kuwait and the United Kingdom. Until next time, goodbye and take care.